Have you ever had a secret so big, so bright, it felt like a sun burning inside your chest? A secret that warmed you from the inside out, but you knew, if you ever let it out, it would scorch everything you ever cared about. My name is Sarah, and for one summer I held a secret like that. It was a secret named Professor Philip Grayson. It didn't start in a classroom, drenched in dramatic, stolen glances. It started with rain. The kind of torrential, mid-May downpour that turns a university campus into a ghost town. I was sprinting from the library, my backpack held uselessly over my head, my copy of Wuthering Heights getting soaked. He was just a figure coming out of the humanities building, a long coat and an umbrella. I'd had him for romantic literature 301 the previous semester. Professor Grayson wasn't just a teacher, he was a performance. He didn't just talk about Byron and Shelley, he channeled them. His voice, a low, resonant baritone, could make a line like "I am nothing. I see all" feel like a personal confession. He had this way of looking at you, not at you, but into you, as if he could see the secret thoughts you'd scribbled in the margins of your own soul. He was, in a word, magnetic. And completely, utterly off limits. That day in the rain, he saw me. Sarah, the one with the fascinating take on Catherine Earnshaw's selfishness. He had to raise his voice over the storm. I was stunned he knew my name. I stammered something about the weather. He just smiled, a slow, crinkling around the eyes smile that felt warmer than the sun we hadn't seen in days. "This is a losing battle," he said, gesturing to my drenched state. "My car, just here. Let me give you a ride." My heart did a thing it had no business doing. A frantic, fluttering thing. This was inappropriate. This was dangerous. This was the only sensible offer I'd had all day. The inside of his car smelled of old books, leather, and faintly of his cologne, something clean and sharp, like cedar wood and rain. The silence was thick, charged. I was hyper-aware of everything. The drip of water from my hair onto his passenger seat, the way his hands rested on the steering wheel, long, elegant fingers. He asked me what I was doing on campus for the summer. "I got an internship at the campus archives," I said, "sorting through the old Frost Beacon poetry collection." His eyebrows shot up. "The Frost Beacon collection, that's a treasure trove. Most of it's uncatalogued, you're lucky." "I feel lucky," I said, and I meant it. But in that moment, sitting next to him in the intimate cocoon of his car, the archive felt like a distant second to the thrill of his proximity. He pulled up to my off-campus apartment. The rain had softened to a drizzle. "Well, Sarah from Romantic Literature 301, he said, turning to me. The car was dark, the only light coming from the dashboard, painting his profile in soft blues and greens. "Be careful with those archives. Some secrets from the past have a way of getting under your skin." Our eyes met. It was just a second, maybe two, but it was enough. It was a current, a live wire. I mumbled a thank you and practically fled into the rain, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I thought that was it, a strange, beautiful, isolated moment. But the universe, it seemed, had other plans. The next week at the archives, buried in a box of unsorted letters from a forgotten 19th century poet, I found a small, water-stained sketch. It was of a woman, her face turned away, looking out over a stormy sea. On the back, in a frantic script, was written, "For my North Star in a starless night, until the summer ends." It felt intimate, forbidden, a secret within a secret. As I was staring at it, a shadow fell over the paper. "The lost sketches of Alastair Crow," a familiar voice said. I wondered where those had gotten to. I looked up. Professor Grayson was standing over me, a faint, curious smile on his lips. He was holding 2 cups of coffee. "The department meeting ran late," he said, as if this was a prearranged meeting. "I thought you might need fuel. This place can be draining." He sat down next to me, not across from me, next to me. Our knees almost touched under the small table. He told me about Alastair Crow, a minor poet who'd had a scandalous affair with a society woman one summer, an affair that ended when her husband returned from abroad in the fall. We talked for an hour, not as professor and student, but as 2 people captivated by a story. He was different outside the classroom, softer, more real. The pedestal I'd put him on began to crumble, replaced by the much more dangerous allure of a man I felt I could actually touch. And that's how it began. He started coming to the archives once a week, then twice. Then, it seemed, he was always there. Our conversations stretched from academic topics to everything else. Our favorite books, our biggest fears, the dreams we'd packed away. He told me he felt trapped in the academic machine, that he missed the raw passion of just writing without the pressure to publish. One afternoon, he brought a picnic. "The archives are closed for maintenance," he lied smoothly, "and it's a crime to be inside on a day like this." We went to a secluded spot by the lake on the edge of town. It was there, with the sun dappling through the oak trees, that he kissed me. It wasn't an aggressive kiss. It was a question. His hand cupped my cheek, his thumb stroking my skin, and he leaned in slowly, giving me every chance in the world to pull away. I didn't. The world dissolved into the smell of grass and lake water and him. When we pulled apart, his eyes were dark, serious. "This is a very, very bad idea, Sarah," he whispered, his forehead resting against mine. "I know," I breathed. "I could lose my job." "I know. You could get hurt." I looked at him, at the conflict in his beautiful, tortured eyes, and I made my choice. "I don't care." And I didn't. In that moment, all the rules, all the consequences felt like words in a book I'd already closed. This was real. This was my story, and it was just beginning. That summer, the world shrunk to the size of a secret, our secret. We created our own private universe, governed by different rules. There were no professors or students. There was only Philip and Sarah. He rented a small, secluded cottage about 30 minutes from campus. It was surrounded by pine trees and had a porch swing that creaked. It smelled of pine needles and the lemon-scented polish he used on the old wooden floors. That cottage became our sanctuary, our altar. I remember the first time I went there. He was cooking pasta, his sleeves rolled up to his elbows, a smear of tomato sauce on his wrist. He was listening to some old, crackly jazz record. He looked so domestic, so unlike the untouchable academic. He saw me in the doorway, put down the wooden spoon, walked over to me, and without a word, wrapped his arms around me and just held me. It was the most profound silence I'd ever experienced. It wasn't empty, it was full. Full of everything we couldn't say. Our days were made of stolen moments. Mornings tangled in his sun-drenched sheets, the light painting stripes across our bare skin. Afternoons spent reading to each other on the porch swing, his head in my lap, my fingers running through his dark, unruly hair. Evenings arguing passionately about books, about life, about everything and nothing. He was brilliant, and he made me feel brilliant too. He saw a fire in me, he said, a raw talent for writing that the university system hadn't managed to extinguish. But there were shadows, even in our perfect summer. The cottage was sparse, almost like a stage set. There were no personal photos, no traces of a life before me. When I asked about it once, he grew quiet. He stared out the kitchen window for a long time. "My life before this summer," he said, his back to me, "feels like a book I read a long time ago. The plot is hazy. The characters don't feel real anymore." He turned to me, his eyes intense. "This is real, Sarah. You are real." It was the kind of romantic, tortured thing a literature professor would say, and I devoured it. I painted a picture in my head of a lonely, misunderstood genius, trapped in a life of quiet desperation until I came along and set him free. I was his muse, his salvation. There was also his phone. He was meticulous about it. It was always on silent, face down. Sometimes it would vibrate with a persistent, angry buzz and he'd glance at it, his jaw tightening, before rejecting the call. "Who is it?" I asked once, trying to sound casual, not like the jealous, possessive girl I was suddenly afraid I was becoming. "The university," he'd say, or my literary agent. "It's nothing, just stress from a world I've happily left behind for now." He'd then kiss me, a deep, claiming kiss that effectively ended the conversation. He was an expert at distraction. But the shadows couldn't compete with the fire. One night, a thunderstorm rolled in, much like the one where our story began. We were on the floor of his living room, wrapped in a blanket, watching the lightning split the sky. The air was charged, electric. "Do you ever feel like this can't last?" I whispered, the words torn from me by a peal of thunder. He turned to me, his face illuminated by a flash of lightning. His expression was raw, stripped bare. "No," he said, his voice low and fierce. "I feel like this is the only thing that will last. Everything else was just waiting." He kissed me then, and it was different from all the kisses before. It was desperate, hungry, almost angry. It was a kiss that felt like a promise and a goodbye all at once. It was a kiss that tasted of storm and salt, and when he whispered my name against my skin, it sounded like a prayer. The peak of our summer was a trip we took, a 3-day weekend at a remote coastal inn. He told the department he was at a conference. I told my roommate I was visiting family. For 3 days, we were nobody. We walked on deserted beaches at dawn, our footprints the first on the wet sand. We drank cheap wine from the bottle and made love in a room that overlooked the endless gray ocean. On our last night, he gave me a gift, a first edition of Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca. "It's about secrets," he said, his eyes holding mine, "and the past, and the terrible, beautiful power of a new love to try and overwrite it." I cried. It was the most perfect, most thoughtful gift anyone had ever given me. I felt seen, known in a way I never had before. Lying in his arms that night, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart, I knew. I was in love with him. Deeply, hopelessly, catastrophically in love. But as August bled away, a chill entered the air. The days grew shorter. The secret that had once felt so bright and warm now began to feel heavy, like a coat I couldn't take off. The real world was encroaching. The fall semester was a dark cloud on the horizon. Our last day at the cottage was a quiet one, a funeral for our secret summer. We packed our things in silence. He held my hand so tightly it almost hurt as we drove back towards town. "What happens now?" I asked, my voice small in the quiet car. He was quiet for a long time, staring at the road. "I don't know, Sarah," he finally said, and he sounded tired, more tired than I'd ever heard him. "We'll have to be careful, so careful." He pulled over a few blocks from my apartment. We couldn't be seen together. Not anymore. "This isn't goodbye," he said, his hand cupping my face. "This is just an intermission." He kissed me. It was soft, lingering, full of a sorrow I didn't fully understand. "I'll see you in the fall," he whispered. I got out of the car and watched him drive away, taking the sun with him. The secret in my chest didn't feel warm anymore. It felt like a shard of ice, lodged deep inside me. The summer was over. The first month of the fall semester was agony. Seeing him on campus was a special kind of torture. Professor Grayson was back. The performance was back. In the lecture hall, he was the same charismatic, distant figure, his voice booming about the tragic flaws of Shakespearean heroes. He never looked at me. Not once. Not a flicker of recognition. I was just another face in the crowd. I tried to catch him after class once. I lingered by his podium, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. "Professor Grayson," I said, my voice trembling. He looked up, his expression polite, professional, utterly blank. "Yes, Miss Evans. Did you have a question about the syllabus?" Miss Evans. The name was a slap. I felt the blood drain from my face. He'd called me Sarah for 3 months. He whispered it against my skin. Now I was Miss Evans. I just wanted to," I stammered. "If it's about your paper topic, my office hours are on the syllabus," he said, turning to pack his briefcase. The dismissal was final. I stood there, humiliated and heartbroken, as he walked out of the lecture hall without a backward glance. The shard of ice in my chest was growing, freezing me from the inside out. I was living a ghost story, haunted by the memory of a man who was now a stranger. I started to wonder if I'd imagined it all, if the summer had been a heat-induced hallucination. And then came the university-wide email. The subject line: "A warm welcome to our new Dean of Humanities, Dr. Aurora Voss." I almost deleted it, but some primal, gut-deep instinct made me click it open. There was a photo, a headshot of a stunning woman in her late 30s. Sharp, intelligent eyes, a confident smile, immaculate blonde hair pulled back in a severe but elegant chignon. She was beautiful, and she looked familiar. I couldn't place it. The email detailed her impressive credentials, her vision for the department. And then, the last line: the one that stopped my heart. Dr. Voss is excited to join our community, and we are equally thrilled to welcome her husband, a valued member of our own faculty, Professor Philip Grayson. The world didn't just stop, it shattered. It exploded into a million jagged pieces. The air vanished from my lungs. Husband. The word echoed in the silent, screaming vacuum of my mind. Philip was married. The sketch for A. Aurora. The sparse cottage, a stage set for an affair. The hidden phone calls, his wife. His vague sadness about his past, his wife. The way he ended things before the semester started, his wife. It wasn't a lonely, misunderstood genius I had saved. It was a liar, a cheat. A man who had a whole other life, a powerful, accomplished wife, while he was playing house with his student in a rented cottage. The final, brutal twist of the knife was the welcome reception for the new dean. It was mandatory for all faculty and encouraged for honors students. I was an honors student. I had to go. I had to see it with my own eyes. I put on a little black dress, the one he'd said made my eyes look like starlight. I felt like I was walking to my own execution. The reception was in the grand hall. It was packed. And there, in the center of the room, holding a flute of champagne, was Philip. And next to him, her arm linked possessively through his, was Aurora. She was even more striking in person, poised, powerful. She was laughing at something a department head was saying, but her other hand was resting on Philip's arm, her fingers splayed, a clear signal of ownership. And Philip, he was smiling. That same charming, crinkly-eyed smile he'd given me in the rain. He looked comfortable. He looked like he belonged at her side. Our eyes met across the crowded room. For the first time since the summer, he truly looked at me. The smile vanished from his face. His eyes widened just for a fraction of a second in pure, unadulterated panic. Then, just as quickly, the mask was back. The polite, professional mask, but I had seen it. The crack, the truth. Aurora followed his gaze. She looked at me, a curious, slightly bored expression on her perfect face. "Philip, darling," she said, her voice crisp and clear, cutting through the murmur of the crowd. "Who is your young admirer? She's been staring quite intently." Philip cleared his throat. He looked from me to her, and then back to me. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. He forced a smile. "Aurora," he said, his voice steady, betraying none of the panic I'd just seen. "This is one of my students from last semester, Sarah Evans." He looked right at me, his eyes empty of every memory we'd ever made, every secret we'd ever shared. "Sarah," he said, as if introducing a stranger. "This is my wife, Aurora." I don't remember what I said. I think I muttered a pleasure to meet you before turning and walking away, my legs moving on autopilot. I walked out of the hall, out of the building, and into the crisp autumn night. The secret was out, not in the way I'd ever imagined. It hadn't exploded. It had curdled, turning from something beautiful into something ugly and poisoned. I never took another class with him. I avoided the humanities building. I heard, through the campus grapevine, that he and Aurora were the it couple of the university. The brilliant dean and her handsome professor husband, the perfect picture. I graduated. I moved on. I became a writer, just like he said I would. But the story I always come back to isn't one of the great romances he taught me about. It's my own. The story of the forbidden summer I spent with my professor. I learned that summer that the most dangerous lies aren't the ones people tell you. They're the ones you tell yourself. I told myself I was his muse, his salvation. The truth was, I was his distraction. A temporary escape from a life he had no intention of leaving. Sometimes I still think about that sketch. For my North Star in a starless night, until the summer ends. I finally understood. I was never his North Star. I was just a summer fling. A secret to be packed away with the beach towels and the sunscreen when the season changed. And he was my professor. And he taught me the most valuable lesson of all. How to spot a tragedy, not in the pages of a book, but in the reflection of your own broken heart.